Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian, and yes, it's Hump Day. It's also one day before Thanksgiving. Everybody's excited about that, of course. We've had a lot of volatility. You look back to yesterday, a lot more volatility. As a matter of fact, you look at the Dow, and the Dow actually started off pretty strong. It got a little jumpy, a little bit more volatile in the early middle parts of the day, and then started to make a nice move to the upside, closed near the highs, up nearly 200 points yesterday. Completely different story, and this dislocation that we've had continues on as we've seen a little bit more pressure on the NASDAQ, a little bit more pressure on some of the semiconductors, not all of them, but some of them for sure. And we've seen a little bit of this as it's been playing out. We had a bit of a recovery yesterday to get off of those awful lows that we were at for the NASDAQ. Still finished the day down about 80 points or so on the NASDAQ. So 10-year continues to kind of sort of move to the upside. We not too terribly long ago, we're talking about how we've been planted and stuck at that 155 sort of a level for the 10-year. Well, we got back not only above 160, but now we're about 167, 168. We've been kind of slowly, steadily moving to the upside, and that just continues as well, even into today. But before we get to that, Bitcoin, on the other hand, has been getting hit and hit and hit and hit. Finished the day yesterday about 57,600 after getting all the way up to 69,000 not all that long ago. We've been seeing this move to the downside. That continues as well. Volatility. We did get up towards 21. We were 19 to 21. We've been moving, as we've been talking about this, we've been moving a little bit of that volatility each and every day. That range has gotten a little wider. It's also gotten a little higher. So we were 15 to 17. Then we moved 16 to 18. And now here we are trading much closer to 19 towards 20 and a half, maybe call it 21. Closed the day around 1940. So we did not close by any means on the highs, especially as we started to react a little bit late in the day and a little bit of that recovery that we've seen as well. Volumes, almost a little disappointing. Not over 50 million yesterday, but 43.3 million, not so bad. It's a little under what we've been averaging for the month of November, but nonetheless, it's amazing to look at 43 million contracts trading and then think, wow, it feels a little bit light yesterday. It's probably going to be light today. As a matter of fact, what we're seeing right now, we've got some very high volume trades, but I would expect that a day like today that we're likely going to see volumes much lower than what we have been seeing. As a matter of fact, I'd be surprised if we weren't somewhere in the 30 million category. 2.2 million Apple trading yesterday. Tesla traded about 1.8 million. That was it. Everything else was dispersed out fairly evenly, and those were your only two that were over a million contracts yesterday. So that's a little bit surprising. Leading the Dow yesterday, financials. Financials have had a very, very nice comeback. A lot of that having to do with what we've been seeing with the 10-year. But yesterday, you had Goldman Sachs, you had JP Morgan, you had Travelers, all 2% or higher yesterday. Financials were up about 1.5%. We had energy absolutely skyrocketing as we bounced off of that 75 level, call it, for the price of crude and gotten back ourselves up over 78. Yesterday we closed a little bit above 78, call it 78 and a quarter towards the closing time of the trading day. But I'll tell you what, 3% move in energy, that says a lot. And that gives you a little bit of example. Those beta names, they were getting slammed to the downside. They're absolutely rocketing to the upside, up 5% or more yesterday. Look at APA, EOG, Occidental, Devon, Marathon, all of those names. Throw in the whole group of the XOP, having a really, really solid day yesterday. Chevron had a pretty good day yesterday as well. Tell you what, Dollar Tree finished the day up about 9%. We also had Ross Stores with a nice move yesterday of about 4%, but it wasn't all rosy yesterday. Best Buy, definitely under pressure. That was down about 12% post-earnings. Tesla was down about 4%. That's been all over the map. It has literally been all over the place. Tesla up and down, and it seems like each and every day just sort of switching. Seems like it's about a 3 or 4% move on a daily basis, but that could be up or that could be down. Zoom hit pretty daggone hard yesterday, down about 14%. A lot of those high multiple, no multiple names were the ones that were really under pressure yesterday, particularly when the NASDAQ was down a couple hundred points. Okta down about 5%. We also had Peloton continues to add to those losses, down about 2.5% yesterday. So this morning, earnings, of course, continue, but they are slowing down. We get a little bit more in certain retail names. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But we start off the day with some pretty heavy pressure, down about 180, 200 points, close to 200 points in the pre-market for the Dow. We also down about 60, maybe call it 80 points, maybe even a little bit more than that for the NASDAQ. It was kind of bouncing around significantly. So they were actually moving together. Then we started to get, as we got closer to the open, we were down well over 200 points. We were down 120 points on the NASDAQ. Had a nice recovery from the NASDAQ. I'm not sure where it is right now, but just a few minutes ago, it had recovered all the way down to the best area of the day, down about 30 points on the day. Not a whole lot, but we also did see a nice recovery out of the Dow as well, cutting those levels in half. It was down about 80 or 90 points just a few moments ago. Crude, 78.50, makes some sense. That's where we've been kind of watching as we've kind of recovered off of these lower ends of that 75 area. And here we are just above 78.50. So the 10-year, 167, 168, getting a heck of a lot closer to 17. Is this going to continue to the upside? We don't know, but we certainly have seen a lot of activity of late in the XLF, some monstrous buys. You've heard me talk about that as my final trade on both halftime and fast money. That's because we've seen consistency finally of the buyers, not just of the individual names, but specifically the XLF itself, and some very, very large option trades there that were very bullish going out into time a little bit. So I look at Bitcoin back underneath 57,000, 56,600. We're looking at volatility that's hanging around above 20 so far today. 19 to about 20, 20 and a half is where we have found ourselves, definitely trading over 20 consistently so far this morning. Consumer discretion, under pressure early, they cut that in half very quickly. These are the areas of that improvement of why we were off that down 200 in the Dow to down, call it 90, and then definitely what we're seeing in terms of the NASDAQ as well. Technology was down about 1%, recovered down about 0.5%. Semiconductors cut that pretty decent as well. They were under pressure early, down about 1.5%, a little bit less than that, but actually last time look, we're down about 0.75%, maybe 0.8% or so. Materials, pretty much unchanged, but down. And energy, a nice recovery. It was already in positive territory, but not only up about 0.25%. Last I looked, it was up about 1.25%. So a nice recovery coming from energy as that made a nice little boost to the upside. So looking at what's going on in the markets itself, you've got retail, you've got some earnings disappointment. We'll hit on some of why they were disappointments and how big those disappointments were. The 10-year, that's perking up a little bit. We talked about that. Technology, selling off a little bit. We've talked a little bit about that, but we've seen a little bit of that recovery. So HPQ, this is one of the names that's having a pretty decent day, actually up about 10%. You look over at energy, as I was talking about, take a look at something like a Diamondback, Conoco, Chevron, those kind of names, definitely starting to feel a little bit stronger as we have started this day, and we continue to push with crude going up a little bit higher. We had Deere up about 5% today. But I talked about some of those retail disappointments, the misses, and all of the rest of that. Take a look at JWN, Nordstrom. Nordstrom under some unbelievable pressure today, down nearly 30%. We're down nearly 20%. Gap stores, that was disappointing as well. Autodesk, disappointing, down about 14%. Tesla, I mentioned, that can be up 4%. That can be down for 3, 4, 5%. Today, it's down about 3%. Leading the way to the downside a little bit in terms of the Dow was Salesforce. But it's not huge. It's down a couple of percent. We look at Nike down a couple of percent. They obviously can move. This is only the first hour of the day. We'll see how that all transitions out. Folks, we have a great day of trading. But before I go, I got two unusuals for you. Now, number one, JP Morgan. We had been seeing XLF. We've been talking about these financials, the reaction that we're seeing right now. We not only have had some activity today in Bank of America, JP Morgan stood out for me because with the stock trading just a little bit above 169, they're buying the calls. They're just out of the money calls, the 170s that expire on Friday, which I believe is a half day. So we'll see how that all plays out. 12,400 of these calls are getting bought. They were started at about 50 cents. They finished at about $1. Stock was trading, as I say, close to about 169, 169.40. It was obviously moving up as that 12,000 contracts were being purchased. Secondly, I've got Ford. Ford trading underneath 20, trading at 19.90. It's had a really nice run to the upside. 22,500 of the January 22 calls getting bought today. They're getting spread off, but we're going to focus on which ones are bought. The January 22 calls, 22,000 of those, about 70 cents for those options. So seeing Ford, and we've been talking about the EV space, and obviously Ford not only has an investment in Rivian, but they've been pushing the envelope and getting a little bit more and more into the EV space. People getting a lot more excited about Ford, GM, and some of the older car makers, not just all of these new EV makers, but that just it shows you. Take a look at that chart for Ford, and we have seen buying, 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 and I've brought it up multiple times on how Ford, with the volumes that it's trading now compared to the past, much like a meme stock or a rebel stock, however you want to frame it. But I'll tell you what, we have been seeing a lot more activity in Ford, more often than we had ever seen. We have seen Ford in that top 2, 3, 4, 5 in the entire universe of the individual names in terms of volumes. And boy, those volumes have been unbelievable. When 40 plus million is your volume and it seems disappointing, that just shows you just how wild things have really become. Folks, have a great day of trading. Have a wonderful and a happy and a safe Thanksgiving. Look forward to seeing you on Friday. Take care. Have a great day of trading.